Talk to investigative journalist Tony Gosling in Bristol in the UK. So, Mohammad El Baradei, he's said that he's ready to head a government if the military give him complete control. Will he get what he wants, Tony?
Well, I think it's quite possible. He's certainly a very good choice. As you may remember, he's the former head of the International Atomic Energy Authority, who was ousted because he wouldn't go along with what they were saying about Iran. He's actually potentially someone that the people can trust from the West and from, most importantly, from within Egypt. But let's not forget Field Marshal Tantawi, the chap who's in charge now. He was Mubarak's defence minister for 20 years, so he's really a representative of the old regime. And what particularly also with these amnesty reports, it's not looking all that good. The Arab Spring's turned very sour, and this is looking more and more to the Egyptian people like a military coup, you know, a long strung-out military coup, rather than any kind of real revolution. So that seems to be the situation. Now, Baradei seems to be a fantastic person, if he can, and if he does have a total free hand to do what he wants there, a way of diffusing this situation, because the parliamentary election campaigns are supposed to begin on Monday, and things aren't looking very good for that right now.
But aren't things looking a little better now that we are seeing the military making concessions, talking about obviously appointing a new prime minister, talking about bringing forward a date to transfer power, and of course we've just heard also, I'm just reading on the wires, a referendum on power is possible. Surely all of these are good indications, are they not, and should appease the protesters?
Well, they certainly are good indications, but then we've had this before. You can never be entirely sure. What we've got is a kind of military oligarchical elite in Egypt, and of course there needs to be some elections soon, but at the moment it's really difficult to tell. I think these concessions have only been made, and the idea of El Baradei being a sort of transition prime minister has only been made because the people have turned out in force over the last few days. And let's not forget the tactics that the police and the military have been using against these originally peaceful protesters. The fact that they've opened fire with live rounds and also with this kind of what they call enhanced CS gas, which has put something like 50 to 100 people in hospital. God knows what that kind of gas is, but it certainly shouldn't have been used. This is the reason why so many people have turned out and are so angry. I mean, the military doesn't seem actually in control of their own police force. The other thing about all this is that the former Interior Minister is potentially a really serious criminal. And I think what's happening is that the military are actually reluctant to allow the democratic process to proceed in Egypt because they know many of Mubarak's former government, and possibly some of them, will be tried and put in jail.
But what about the timing of all of this? You're saying people are turning out now and are extremely angry, the protests are growing and growing. All of a sudden this is happening just a week before the elections. Why now?
Well, this is a really good question, because why was it that the police and the military decided to get tough with small groups of protesters in the square just a few days ago in the run-up to an election? It's a very, very sensitive period, and if they wanted those elections to go ahead smoothly, the last thing they should have been doing was cracking down, particularly with gas, this kind of particularly draconian and inhuman, potentially as well illegal methods. They're not obviously interested in peaceful protest right now, but it may be that the hundreds of thousands of people that have turned out in the square will force them to actually start listening and to allow peaceful protest again.
What about the repercussions elsewhere? Could this unrest trigger similar demonstrations in the countries that have experienced uprisings in the recent past, like Libya and Tunisia?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Tunisia, because the whole process of the Arab Spring started with Tunisia, and we had really immediately with their election, the third most popular party, Hashmi Hamdi's party, was many of their candidates were, after the election, were annulled and told that they couldn't take their seats. Now, this is a serious problem if you think about it. If you're going to stop somebody standing in an election, you should do that before they stand, or at the process that they put themselves forward, not after the election and after they've won. So I think we should be keeping our eyes really closely on how this whole Arab Spring, how the election processes take place. Of course, there's no elections in places like Saudi Arabia and in Bahrain, where I understand tonight there are even more disturbances, and these are the places that we really need to make sure that we focus, not necessarily just Syria, some of these other dictatorships, essentially, I mean, they're kingdoms, dictatorships, and they're very much in the pocket of the West, these other countries. We've got to keep an eye on those too.
Tony Gosling live from the UK there in Bristol. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.